Hey, good to have you here for this episode. Today we're diving into something pretty fundamental, what it means for truth to be constant, and how that idea plays out when we look at the Quran's claims.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. Truth as a constant is kind of the bedrock of logic and reality, right? The law of identity, A equals A. It sounds simple, but it's huge.
Exactly. Without that, everything falls apart. Like in physics, constants, such as the speed of light, are essential. If those changed, depending on who was observing, the universe would literally collapse.
Right, and on a more everyday level, you can't build a bridge or run a business on shifting truths. If what's true today isn't true tomorrow, you're in trouble.
So the big question is, what happens when we apply this principle of invariant truth to religious texts, specifically the Quran, which claims to be the unchanging word of God?
That's where things get really interesting. The document we're discussing lays out three major collisions, where the Quran's claims seem to conflict with this idea of constant truth.
Let's start with the first one, the logical collision. It's about the aorta. The Quran says if Muhammad lies, God will cut his aorta. But Muhammad died, describing his aorta being cut.
Yeah, that's wild. So the Quran sets this kind of test. If the prophet lies, this specific punishment happens. But then, Muhammad's death seems to fulfill that very condition.
And defenders try to get around this by saying the aorta, mentioned in the warning, isn't the same as the one in Muhammad's deathbed description. They argue it's a different word or meaning.
Which is basically saying A does not equal A. That breaks the law of identity. It's like saying 2 + 2 = 4 in one context, but 5 in another, just to save a theory.
Yeah, and that's logically impossible if truth is constant. You can't just redefine terms to avoid inconvenient facts.
So this logical collision exposes a fundamental inconsistency. If the Quran is the absolute truth, it can't contain contradictions like this.
Moving on, the second collision is historical, the crucifixion of Jesus. Historically, Jesus' crucifixion is well documented by multiple non-Christian sources like Tacitus and Josephus.
But the Quran claims Jesus wasn't crucified. It was a divine illusion. That's a huge divergence from established history.
Right, and that implies God created a 600-year-long deception, making everyone believe something that didn't happen.
Which is problematic, because a God of truth can't be the architect of such a deception without violating the constancy of truth.
Exactly, for the Quran's claim to be true, all other historical evidence must be false, which is logically and historically untenable.
It's like saying the entire historical record is a lie, just to preserve one narrative. That doesn't hold up under scrutiny.
Then we get to the third collision, the internal one, involving the so-called satanic verses incident.
This is where Muhammad recited verses praising pagan goddesses, which pleased both pagans and Muslims, but later claimed those verses were inserted by Satan.
That's a direct admission that the Quran's transmission was compromised, contradicting the claim that it's perfectly protected from error or satanic interference.
The document breaks this down into 3 system errors. First, the breach of the secure line between God and Muhammad,
meaning the transmission wasn't secure if Satan could inject false verses.
Second, the failure of discernment. Muhammad couldn't tell the difference between divine and satanic messages at the time.
And third, the greatest of deceivers loop, where a later verse admits all prophets can be deceived by Satan, undermining prophetic infallibility.
So this incident shows the Quran is a variable text, shaped by political and psychological factors, not a constant divine revelation.
It's a pretty serious challenge to the idea of the Quran as an invariable word of God.
Definitely. And that brings us to the standard of invariance, which the document uses as a mental model for truth.
Right, the idea that a truth must be consistent across time, place, and interpretation. Like, if 2 + 2 = 4 in Australia, it must also equal 4 on Mars.
If it changes based on who's interpreting it, then it's not really truth, it's something else.
Applying this to the Quran, because its claims depend on variable interpretations, synonymy, and historical reinterpretations, it fails this standard.
The document also talks about abrogation, the Quran changing or canceling previous verses, which is a form of variability incompatible with constant truth.
And synonymy, where different words or meanings are used to hide contradictions.
Plus deception, explaining away historical facts as illusions or divine tricks.
all of which point to a system that's variable, not constant.
Another big implication is the variable God problem. The Bible's God is described as the truth and incapable of lying.
But the Quran introduces God as the best of deceivers, which is a fundamental change in the character of God.
That's a 180-degree shift in the source code of God's nature, meaning the Quran's God isn't the same constant truth.
So these contradictions seriously undermine the Quran's claim to be the invariable word of God.
Which brings us to the 2 + 2 = 4 inches verdict, the bottom line.
Truth must be absolute and invariant. If the Quran contains satanic injections, variable interpretations, and historical allusions, it can't be the absolute truth.
The Satanic Verses incident is the ultimate proof that the Quran's transmission was variable and compromised.
So, by the laws of logic and reality, the Quran is a variable system, not a constant truth.
It's a powerful conclusion, and it really highlights the importance of invariance in any truth claim, religious or otherwise.
Yeah, and this analysis is based on logic, history, and philosophy, not faith or theology.
Exactly. It's about rigorous scrutiny and consistency.
So, for listeners with a solid background in these fields, it's worth reflecting on how narratives that rely on variable truths can seem convincing, but ultimately don't hold up.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that the foundation of any claim to truth has to be unshakable.